Hello and welcome to Just Roll Ones, everything about Conquest. We are episode 19 and we have a very special guest with us today. We have Leandros or Leo from Power Better Themselves. Hi Leo, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. And thank you for
No,
being so flexible and making this happen.
no problem at all. Thank you for joining us. It's like what, 10 o'clock there at the moment? 10 in the evening?
Yeah, about that. But
Yeah.
it's all good. We're calm. Just it's very nice. Has a nice little breeze. The weather here is finally getting better, so it's super nice to just hang out.
Awesome. And I should probably add that we have Aaron with us as well. Hiya,
Yeah.
mate.
No, how you doing? Yeah, I'm here as well. Obviously, the least interesting person on the podcast today. But yeah, no, really forward, and thank you again for joining us, Leah.
It was a pleasure. I mean, I was excited to just talk a little bit more about what's coming, what's happening, the update, what's changing, all the new stuff. Because I mean, there are quite a few, and you guys have seen things throughout testing, and it's nice to be able to talk about it now openly after all this time testing all the things, literally all the things.
Mm.
Yeah, especially with some of the factions as well. Like there's some big. It's not just like simple rule changes or anything. There's like been a whole design change.
Two of
Um,
them,
two of
actually,
them
two
even.
of them.
Yeah, two of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, so it's really exciting. Um, yeah, I mean, for those who like for any like new players or anything, do you want to just kind of give yourself a quick introduction, Leo?
Yes. So I'm Leo. I'm the lead developer for Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings and Conquest: First Blood. I've been working for the company since the inception of the game, really, and I've worked to always develop and modernize and keep updating the game and bring all exciting new factions for all of you Conquest players. And honestly, just excited to be able to do it.
Yeah,
Oh,
fantastic.
fantastic!
Uh,
I mean, I
yeah.
know, I know where James and I. In fact, have we met you once or twice? I don't know. Have you ever
Yes.
made it over to UK GE?
Yes, actually, I did make it for one LGT, and I did get to hang out with James uh, when I went there with Yannis, the
Yes.
member, yeah, from community team.
Yeah, there's a great. Well, I'll let the. I never told you this at the time, and I'll let the listeners know at once. You broke the blind in the back of my car. I gave you and Yanis a lift to your murder hotel.
True,
um,
that was an experience. That was an experience.
mhm.
Yeah.
We found out this LGT though. There's actually a really nice cafe next door to your murder hotel that you stayed in.
Okay.
So we had a really nice. So if you come over again, we can go to the really lovely breakfast cafe. Yeah,
Next to the murder hotel. Next to the
well,
murder
exactly.
hotel. Yeah.
I
Questionable source of meat, I guess.
Yes.
I had Yanis in the car with me, and when we like pulled up just outside the hotel, he still had the look of like PTSD on his face. I was like, "Oh God, not again!"
Yeah, it was anything that could have gone wrong in that trip managed to happen. So, but yeah, anyway, so the important thing is we pulled through and we
Yeah.
managed to get to you guys. So that's the important bit.
Oh,
Oh,
awesome. Brilliant. So yeah, so we're gonna go. So we're gonna go through. So obviously, like, it's probably not any great secret that there's a bunch of changes coming. There's
Yes.
like some universal rules changes, as well as changes for each kind of faction. But also, like, there's been a strong focus on two of those factions that will come on to a little bit as well. I guess I just want to ask you first of all, Leo, like, kind of what prompted the changes? Like, what kind of like was there like a catalyst or like a cause for changes, or was it just to try and keep the game fresh and keep it kind of like always rotating, always evolving kind of thing?
So there are two kinds of updates that came that the way that I see it, and when it comes to what sort of content is coming out right now. One is updates that have to do with the general health of the game and the quality of life of the players. So that mostly has to do with a lot of the core rules, right? How they're being clarified, how they're being written, how they're being communicated. These are incredibly important concepts. And then there are big changes to the factions to the point of redesigns, I would say, because folks are going to be seeing a complete rehaul of Wadroon and a redesign of the Nords as well. And these are prompted for a number of reasons. One is essentially Wadroon needed that, let's say, rework because we had to make sure that there was enough design space for new things to come out. And that's incredibly important because, for example, we've gotten a lot of questions from testers in general saying, well, Wadroon did so well in Heos, right, for the World Finals, or we've been seeing them performing so well. Why are you updating a faction that is performing well? And the answer is exactly because it is performing well. When you have a faction that's performing well, you have to take into consideration that it's doing so today. But what happens if you add the Quatl Rider, the Chosen of Death, uh, new characters? This might be a little bit spoiler for folks listening. But what happens when all of these things come out? And the biggest culprit in the Wadroon list were unfortunately the chants. Now the chance is a wonderful mechanic, right? It's absolutely one of my favorites. But the problem that it had is that it was 4 cults of 3 tiers each, and that meant 12 different effects. Every category, 3 of them would actually compound. Sorry, and what that meant is some of these upgrades and abilities, let's say, could be incredibly potent and incredibly useful. Some of them would be there because they had to be there, right? You needed 12. So you have to create an artificial need for these upgrades because otherwise, what's the point of having, let's say, a special, like a bonus that you cannot really do anything with? And the problem that this created is that some regiments were absolutely fine under this system, but some other regiments were asphyxiating because if you given them just one attack more or just 1 point of defense more, they would be completely broken, right, under a tier 3 or tier 2 chant. And if you were keeping them too low to compensate for that, well, you essentially had a dud in your hands where you couldn't really do anything with out of fear that it would be completely broken. And this sort of conundrum really prompted the rework in the Wadroon. And what you're seeing right now for experienced Wadroon players would look like a lot of the things here are gutted. In reality, a lot of the power that the chants used to give now is transferred to the regiments themselves. And that's happened in a few ways. One is that now certain regiments that very much needed certain stats can get them. So, for example, you can have your Thunder Riders defense of 4 without fearing that, let's say, a chant can get them up to defense of 5. That's very important because that's not a problem, let's say, for hunters, but it is a problem for Thunder Raiders. Then you have certain abilities or certain, let's say, regiments unlocking chants of their own. That's another cool thing, right? To say that, apart from the battle cry table that you used to, now there are certain things that actually have their own chance. Like slingers, for example, they have singing bullets, or and you can really do cool things like that. And then the other thing is, by removing rules as fanatic, we can go back to, let's say, regiments like the Chosen of Conquest or Chosen of Death or all of this cool stuff, and say that now you have your own, let's say, triggered ability that every time you chant from, let's say, uh your um your cult, you get this extra bonus. Essentially, that's your tier 3 moved from something that can be given universally to something that can be given to the regiments that are really part of that theme and really belong in that theme. So now, when balancing needs to be done, essentially what we do is to say, okay, so let's say the slingers are very powerful under chanting. We can address the slingers themselves rather than fearing changing the chanting system. And this is what I'm talking about, opening up design space, right? This was very much needed for the Wadroon, because suddenly you would have the Quatl. Think of, as people are seeing the new rules, try to think of, let's say, things like the Quatl under the previous Wadroon rules. It would have suffocated. You wouldn't be able. You would either have something that couldn't perform, or something that would be overperforming. It's right underneath there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, yeah, my main faction, my favorite faction is Wardrun as well, and yeah, it's been really interesting being involved in the playtesting stuff and seeing like, yeah, okay, this is a problem, this is a problem, and like you said, it always felt really, yeah, you were almost like too restricted or too reliant on the chanting to make anything kind of feel good on its own. It was always like so chant uh dependent.
Yeah.
That yeah, and like you
And
said with the Quaddle as well, it's completely, yeah, completely get it.
that was very important. That is, these moves are important for the health of the game. Definitely, sometimes the change might feel a little bit too much. For players that are used to one system, but ultimately, we have to make sure that the health of the game is a priority, and the Woodrun really needed that. For example, the other quality of life thing that you might see in front of you, you'd see things that are called battlefield roles, right? So essentially, these battlefield roles are super types, uh, right? What it means is that, let's say, is a pseudo subfaction divisioner in one way, but what really does is that you can very easily communicate what kind of rules should be played with what kind of regiments. You can, let's say, what you call it, you may be more efficient in the language when it comes to targeting. So let's say you're playing spires, right? And you want to target something that is under spire. Right? Force-grown drones are under spire, but brood drones are under spire as well. The problem is that if I have to tell you, well, if I now want to make, let's say, a sort of targeting group to say that I only really want to target the things that are under spire, but not all infantry, and then I also want to include Brood drones in there. Suddenly, language becomes very convoluted and very complicated. And one of the ways to completely, to make that a lot more accessible is by introducing these super types. So now you know that when I'm talking about the tribes, I'm talking for the Wadroon about the part of the army that is the veterans, the braves, the blooded, the chieftain, right? All that good sort of stuff. When I'm talking about the speakers, I'm talking about dinosaurs, raptor riders, quaddles, all that. So if I tell you that the speakers gain something, we no longer have to go through very convoluted and big explanations about what is what. You can very quickly know what we're talking about.
Yeah, totally agree. Um, and I also like it from like a very thematic point of view as well. You've already started like trying to subdivide them into their own not sub factions, but they're almost like their own like cohorts or divisions.
Yeah, because for example, let's say we're seeing the Promethean Oracle and the Jotnar Satyr. So for example, they are targeting Titans, and Titans is, let's say, how we call the race of giants throughout, Nords and city states, right? So they target Titans in general. And of course, all of these things are changes that folks right now will only see in the Wadroon, the Nords, the city states for the Promethean Oracle, and for the Sorcerer Kings to help a little bit with handling the concept of Born of Fire and Born of Air. This one, so right, because to simplify the language there. But as we're moving on, all of the factions are going to be getting this sort of rework. So, for example, most people, following our happy hours have seen that the brand new things are coming for the 100 Kingdoms to populate
Yeah.
the theist, the religious, the theist and the deist sort of side of the army. Uh, that means that 100 Kingdoms are getting their rework. Actually, it's being worked on as we speak, right? And so
Okay.
after that, we're going to have we're going to be talking about the Dwegom, about the Spires, about introducing new elements for the Sorcerer King. So all of the factions are going to get that treatment actually quite soon, right? So nobody's going to be left behind for long.
No. That sounds brilliant. I mean, we're talking about Wandruna a lot. Should we have a look at
Sure,
the army list, the new faction list?
sure.
Uh,
So oh, sorry, Aaron.
so I was just going to say, so I guess obviously people have watched the happy hour before, hopefully,
Mm.
before this comes out. But I guess, yeah, what would be really good is maybe what, we've mentioned over the chants and the battlefield roles, which I think, just personally from testing has made things a lot easier and more clear. And I think also opens up a lot of rule space, which I think you gave really good examples for. I know you talked about chanting, but even with just the specific kind of unit designations, it means that you can, give a really powerful buff to a character or a unit that won't, necessarily affect everything in the army.
Yeah.
So you can give, for instance, you could give Uga. I'm not saying this is not a spoiler. You could give Uga, +1 cleave without giving it to the Iceotnar, for instance. It's really good. But yeah, I guess what do you think were the biggest changes in Wadroon in the other than chanting, which I think we've covered? What do you think the biggest changes were to how people will play them?
So it's hard to say the biggest changes because in my eyes it's a redo.
Mhm.
So I don't really see it as a change. I see it as a restructure. But I think that as a Wadroon player, a Wadroon player would feel that they're playing the same faction as they were playing before. Not being disenfranchised is incredibly important. That chants are there to elevate your army, but not to define every single outcome of every battle. In the
Yeah.
sense that a lot more power is back to the regiments. Now you can actually feel that a Wadroon warrior is a powerful entity and not just have to depend so heavily on spamming tier 3 constantly. Now you can take your time, you can consider your options, you can look at all of these new and different regiment specific chants, right? That I feel bring a lot of depth to the game, and ultimately make the cult playstyle more important than it was before. Before, the cults were simply a name of a set of buffs, but now the cult of war, death, famine, conquest really bring a lot of their own character. People will see differences that actually can tell you a lot about how we're going to be approaching all factions when it comes to items and masteries.
You should.
Uh,
In fact, I'll scroll down and we can have a look through those now. There we go.
Yeah, this is where just in case you don't know, Leo, we don't know what Aaron's doing.
Oh,
As you can see,
I'm
as you can
sharing
see
the
his screen.
screen. I'm sharing my screen with you on Discord.
So
Oh,
you're
you
going
do
to
it on there.
notice,
Oh,
let's say that first of all, we're talking about less artifacts. So we're aiming about maximum of 10 on every faction, mostly because we've had a lot of things that a lot of times we had all of these items that were not always as useful. So we want to make sure that we give enough really useful options. You're going to notice that some of them are actually constrained to characters following certain cults. And this is now us being able to introduce, let's say, cult heirlooms or relics, let's say, that really help you define and really help you refine your approach to a certain of a certain cult. Now, if you scroll a little bit further down, you're going to notice the masteries follow that route as well. So the masteries are actually split between the four cults. You no longer have that very let's say generic distribution of combat, arcane, or tactical. But now these categories are actually much more personalized to the faction. They're more about what the faction really is and more about what that theme that they represent is about. So that's why it's so much more important. Um, Right, that all of these new masteries and all of that new gameplay really highlight and showcase the cults more. Ultimately, the chants lore-wise are just are like a continuation of the cults that sing them, and it has been a petty it has been a pity. Like I've always felt that we could really bring bring out the cults so much better and do so much more with them. And this is essentially this attempt for the wardrobe.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah, fantastic.
I mean, I really like the change to masteries,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
really
same.
excited to try some of these out for sure. I'd say my personal favorite is Blood from Teaching to Death. I think my personal
Yeah,
favorite.
I really like that one as well. I think my favorite is actually the authority. I just love
Authorities
like the
authorities are good one,
yeah.
yeah.
I just love like that, again, like looking at the theme of it, like the thematic kind of like focusing on just like the tribe elements
Mhm.
and
And
stuff. Yeah,
one of the things I would like to show, like if we go a little bit, let's say to the drum beast, right, which is at the last page of the
Last
of the regiment.
Oh, yeah. There've been a
So
lot of
let's
people
say,
asking about this.
mm,
so for example, one of the other things that that this update served is that by opening up design space, you're also opening up design space not for new releases, but for your current regiments to explore. And Drum Beast was one that we always knew deep down in the lore and in in the briefs that we had internally that it had to better work with a chanting system, right? But the previous chanting system just didn't really allow us to give it a very cool and thematic ability. But now you can have, let's say, primal cacophony and and abilities like this that when the drum beast comes in, it's there, like you feel its presence. That whole thing, that whole aura that it creates around it is something that your opponent has to deal with, right? And it ties into, and it all comes from this new chanting system that allows it to have its own chant without that chant affecting, let's say, the uh, the effectiveness or the performance of other regiments. It's simply a drum beast chant, and we can always adjust it for the drum beast alone. That's the sort of what you call it. That's the sort of uh, what's the word? What's the word? The when you have a lot of choices, like
yeah. You kind of yeah you kind of sport for choice with it.
you're more maneuverable. Like let's say in how
Yeah,
you're gonna
yeah. You're
approach
more kind of versatile, more adaptable with it.
adaptable. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
It's
mean
fun.
it's
It's funny how we named the master after it, but I couldn't remember the word. Adaptability.
no,
Yeah.
it's a great change for the drum beats, and yeah, like I said, it primal cacophony is that real like yeah, I'm here, be afraid. Um, yeah, and I mean it's we've gone to the things. The other thing is that just going back to like the chanting stuff, all the different themes. There's almost like a second army rule for the Wardroom, or at least how I've been seeing it in terms of like the warlord needs to pick
Mhm.
a specific cult to follow as normal, but the cult they follow they get some bonuses with,
Yeah.
and they can
And
also
this is
choose to
where,
follow Conquest if they want to as well.
yes. And this is really, it brings us to the cult of the Kunfazane. This is the rule that replaces the hymn of the brave. So this is the attempt to bring army composition a little bit closer and include cults into this. Essentially, first of all, so far, the sign of Conquest was really the character that was that was doing most of the heavy lifting for the cults right now. But essentially, we're talking about a new concept where what cult your warlord is following helps define helps you, let's say, more easily bring some of these cult regiments on the table. So that's very interesting as well.
Mm. I think I'm just going to quickly jump back to the drum beast that we were talking about before, because I
Yeah.
think it's a really good example of what you were talking about with the chants. So obviously before, because it was all focused on the chants and on a lot of things like fanatic, etc., needing 3 tokens. I don't think you'd really be able to see something like primal cacophony, which I think is a fantastic rule. Because basically it's a unique rule for the drum beast that you can balance just around a single model.
Mhm. Yeah.
I also love that there's some nice synergy with the drum beat ability. So you would activate the drum beast, you would put 2 tokens down, and then you'd be able to chant for primal cacophony, which I think is fantastic. And it doesn't affect the balance of any other unit. Obviously drum beat does affect other units, but you can balance that around the drum beast rather than around the whole chanting system.
Yeah.
I think. Sorry, go on, Leo.
No. I agree, and yeah, like when it comes to other than that, when it comes to chanting, is pretty much what you're used to, with the only exception that you must chant when sorry, you chant with 3 markers. You cannot choose to chant with less, but you're not forced to. You make, like, when you have 3 chain markers, if you add 1 more, you're just going to start replacing, but you're not, like, to account for abilities that add chain markers to your sequence. You're not forced to do that. The other thing, the most interesting thing, if you can also show the Tontor, which is right above,
Yep.
right in the previous page, is that one of the biggest problems that we have with the Tontor and the drum beast is that the biggest part of their, let's say it, of their performance really had to do with that huge dinosaur carrying everything, right? So it was very difficult to really separate them in terms of offensive power because of the model, essentially the base of the model being the same. But now, by being able to have, their own chance, you now have that extra layer of design space that you can have 2 completely distinct entries, even if, honestly, like, literally the biggest part of the model, and we're talking about the biggest, really big part of the model, is really the same dinosaur. So that solves an incredibly important problem we had when separating between the Tontor and the drum beast.
Yeah, no, exactly, like you said, like the Tontor's got his own special chant there as well, which I like, because it normally, if you got the Tontor, you're definitely going to want to be like chucking it up the battlefield, getting it involved as soon as. Whereas the drum beast was always a bit more like a supporting role. So now there's now the different, like the unique individual chants just really help kind of reflect like how you may just want to use them individually as well.
I love the chant for the Tontor. It fits
Yeah.
into my head lore about the Tontor because he's such a cute guy. He's just there. He's having a great time. He's not trying to kill you. You're just in the way. He's very high up, and he now can chant as eight stands for the purpose of zones. So he's just there now. He doesn't even have to attack you. He can just sit on the zone and have a great time. I think that's
He's
fantastic.
just nice and happy. Yeah,
He's just having a lovely time.
Can we have a look at the Quatl? Because it's obviously like the
of
one of
course.
the big things that's due to come out next.
So there's quite a bit of a story. So at the very beginning, like, we did announce that the Quatl is going to be one of the first airborne regiments in the game. And look, I will tell you what, I really do believe that when you design a game, sometimes you have the opportunity to redefine people's expectation when it comes to a certain concept. And I'm not gonna lie to you, in a sense, like, we worked hard on making Airborne something that would not evoke negative experiences of games in the past. To not name any, but ultimately we decided that this was not what the game needed. It was not. It was a cool idea. The model was perfect for it. It really lent itself to that. But ultimately, and even though I loved the concept of having that flying Quatl just gliding around, I had to let it go. I had to see it go away. It wasn't working. It wasn't performing the way that it should perform, and we opted to take it back into this fly regimen that used to be before, and we felt that we added enough design space as it is now to give enough room for the Quatl to sign without having to add a new entire layer of rules in the airborne. So no airborne.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in that. I really like the idea of Airborne in terms of like again like the immersiveness of having these great big flying things flying about high above and being like a yeah, just a danger from above kind of thing. But it's yeah, it obviously was good. It obviously did seem to be like a difficult thing to balance, and yeah, about naming like other game systems, there was a lot of
Yeah.
like just immediate, I think, concern and anxiety
Yeah,
from
yeah.
how it could be played. Yeah,
And that's a lot of our a lot of our play testing. I mean, you've seen it. A lot of things are tested. A lot of things are scrapped.
Mm.
And like I'm trying, what's I'm trying to not get caught up too much in certain designs because ultimately, it doesn't matter if you write a game. If the game never really belongs to you, it belongs to the people playing it, and that's not something that I just. This isn't, one of these nice things that you just say, but the reality is that it doesn't matter what I think of something. It really matters what the community thinks when it comes to a rule. I might absolutely love it, but if it's not working for the community, then it doesn't
yeah,
work.
no,
So
absolutely.
so in that regard, I'm never shy to toss an idea I've put a lot of work in, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah. No, and in credit to you, Leo, as well. Like a lot of concern came back to it, and you just went, "Yep, okay, it's not going to be a thing."
I'm sure
And
Yeah.
it was all measured and reasonable concern.
As it
No
is,
one thought
as it is
the
always is, as always.
Oh.
Well,
it
So
we've
always
just a
is,
quick
yeah.
question. Leo, how many Quatl do you think it would be reasonable for one person to put in a list?
Yes.
What do you reckon the
how
Quatl per
many?
list is?
Okay, so reasonable is a very subjective term, my friend. What I believe is reasonable. If I could have literally a list that is only Quattles, I mean, the only thing that's holding me back is the Winglord Predator cap. Like, I can only have two of the same characters. Okay, I need to change that really quick, and then I'll answer back to you.
They can actually take 6. Yeah, the news just in.
I can kind of hear Dow. I can almost like sense like Dow's ears are burning right now, going, "Oh, Quattle sales."
Yeah, that would have a great time. That would be brilliant.
If
But I mean, I don't. Oh well, I hadn't even noticed this. That shows how much I've looked at the Quatl recently. Obviously, he's now a medium, so can also score. I believe.
Yes, and I mean, you can get it in the Matriarch Queen. You could get it as a
Yeah.
restricted in the Chieftain. The Thunder Chieftain has it. Like a lot of folks have it as a restricted. And actually, so I think my I think everybody has it as a restricted. Yeah,
Nice. So
I think,
you've heard it
yeah.
here. Buy at least 6 Quatl.
8. Make them 8. The cap is 8.
8.
Make them
That's
8.
true. Yeah,
Eight
The
and
Quattle.
cap
2
is 8.
characters. You can take 10. You can take 10 Quatl in a list. Yeah.
Unfortunately, 8 would be the cap because of tournament rules. They cap at 8. I'm
So
so sorry.
but you've got 2 characters too. So
Yeah,
you've got the 2 wing,
Oh, true.
whatever they're
Yeah,
called,
yeah. We're
the
two.
yeah,
10,
The
yeah.
10
two. Yeah,
characters.
yeah. So
If
it's
I
I'm
win
sure
the
possible.
you.
lottery, Yeah, if I win the lottery, I'm so doing that.
Air Force Chant is coming. Chant,
Would
yeah.
be amazing.
Yes.
That'll be a fun
Um,
TTS list to play.
I mean, good. I mean, on like the Quatl and everything. I mean, this is due to come out after the. I think we're planning on this coming out after, certainly after the happy hour,
Yeah.
but also after all the rules get released anyway. On I think it's like next Monday or something. Can we have a look at the new character that's going to be
Of
coming out?
course. Because I guess, yeah, no, and I've seen this as that sort of. There we go. That was a lucky click.
That was a great pick.
Okay, let me just make this a little bit.
So that is the Winglord Predator. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah,
Now,
he's so fun.
so with the Quatl, I mean, with the Winglord Predator, essentially, we want to give people an opportunity to have a character leading from above on the Quatl. Um, we are playing a little bit with the concept of um, like characters here providing other regiments with access to a chant, and this is really his let's say shtick in that, and this is really something, really a concept that I like about the new wardrobe design, that you have, let's say, this ability to say, okay, one regiment may have its own chant, but through a character or through an item or something, you can unlock more chants that you have access to, and all of these do not cannot happen at the same time, but suddenly through the chant system you can add a lot of customization. So predatory shriek is Winglord's way of trying to give you some sneak some terrifying in there for all of your regiment killing needs.
Yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
playing around with a terrifying 3 Apex, and it's good fun. God,
Yeah, and you can do it. You have
yeah,
to not get anything else. You have to not chant something else, which
yeah,
is now a legitimate decision you have to make, right? Not everything just keeps piling up and compiling. But the other cool thing is that you're going to notice that, let's say, certain regiments, they don't have a chant of their own, but they have what you call it, they have their own, let's say, triggered ability. So the slingers, the singing bullets, for example, is one of those, that it's a triggered ability. They could
mm,
hypothetically chant a new chant that they have access to, right? And then, but at the same time, also gain the benefit of their ability.
yeah, singing bullets. So yeah, if they chant the battle cry, their entire barrage range counts as their effective range until the end of the round. So yeah, so they get the benefit of whatever they chanted plus this extra little like bonus to it.
Exactly.
But you said you still got to invest a chanting into them.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess it part of what I found was that part of the balance about this was that chanting isn't going to be as frequent as what it is currently. We don't have a fanatic anymore. You've got to chant at 3 tokens, etc. There's more of a build up to it
Mm.
as well. So it makes you really kind of want to like you kind of said, like you've got these various different options out of what you could use the chanting for, and they're not as frequent. So it really feels more like a very kind of impactful but like scarce resource
Mhm.
that you really need to kind of like ration or really kind of consider when and how you want to use it.
Yeah, and at the
Yeah,
same time, not being forced to do it at 3 by necessity
yeah,
also helps a little bit not waste it unnecessarily. So it gives you a little bit of maneuverability there as well. Because
yeah,
if
absolutely.
you're a bit, sometimes you might, it might be the next regiment that really wants to set the chant off, right?
Yeah, no,
I think
absolutely.
it's nice in that sense, and I don't think it's like oversimplified the chanting mechanics. but I do think that it's kind of on the newer end, so newer players to Woodrune, it's kind of maybe smoothed that learning curve a little bit. So now, if your opponent does kill off your unit you were hoping to chant with, it doesn't completely screw your chant order for the whole turn, which I think is really nice. So I guess my pick for favorite unit is the Thunder Riders, which have always been my favorite unit in the game. I love their fancy little hats, and I really love what's happened with them now. So I was on the receiving end of a famine charge of Thunder Riders at LGT last weekend, but these rules are really, really, really nice. I think so. The one I think is two actually. First one, Juggernaut, which I think is a great rule, giving their charge distance to be March +5. Which I think is just really Thunder Ridery. I think it's a great kind of rule. And the other one, I really like this rule of Devastating Charge. So obviously Thunder Riders are an impact cavalry. They want to be march charging. And they're now rewarded from it. So if you do a march and then you do a charge, you get Brutal Impact +1, which makes them Brutal Impact 3, which is really good for killing Praetorians, I think. So I'm really happy with that. I can't stress enough how much I hate that unit. I love playing it, to be clear.
That unit will change from its current Aura of Deathy nature for sure. But yeah, actually, what you were saying about the Thunder Riders is a great segue to that. It's incredibly important that certain regiments find enough design space to really show their identity. And Thunder Raiders, for example, there were always this, in my heart at least, this, great regiment that if you invested enough points into, you could just devastate anything. But that also ran you a lot of points that would become very expensive. It was very difficult to, let's say, sometimes like in a competitive setting, a really, really good under the previous rules, Fanatic Thunder Rider with the Thunder Chieftain sort of combo would run you 460 points to really do the damage.
Yeah.
And
I was saying, am I right to quickly mention something that was in testing that didn't make it into the game?
I'll go
Very
for it.
quickly. Yeah. Right. The most ridiculous Thunder Riders ever was in a really brief period of time where they could be both Fanatic and Cult of Conquest. And I played a test game against it. It was very brief. I played a game against James, and I think he ran like a block of 8 Thunder Riders or something ridiculous, and he was just triple activating across the board, like completely destroying everything. And I was like, nope, this is ridiculous. We're not having this any further.
Sometimes it's just, sometimes in testing, you test quite a few things. I think at some point we tested something with 1,000 wounds just for no reason. Just to really explore how far how susceptible that thing is to terrifying and having very little to no defense. How quickly, like how much, what is really the relationship between going up in wounds and defensive stats, just like empirically. Like how, because sometimes it's very easy to sit down and do the math and you're saying, well, this is the exact relationship between them. But then when you actually put them on the table, I remember we did that like a while ago, you end up having to use it in a few interesting ways. Obviously, you've never made it, right? But we tested it with 200 woods and 100 woods, right? With things like that. And, it's been sometimes making really broken things for testing is fun.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it also helps you learn like where the point is that's too much, like if you don't push it, then you don't know, do you?
But what I wanted to say about Thunder Raiders is that making the purpose of each regiment more apparent and more clear, it has been a priority for us. Because what I like to say is that, and something that I share a lot when I speak about game design, is that there are 3 things in design. There is balancing, as we understanding from a competitive standpoint. There is innovation and therefore engagement, like what really keeps you, why you find this to be cool and new and exciting. And then there is accessibility. Um, every time we design a new thing, any one thing can only have two out of the three things. It can be incredibly balanced and very competitively viable, and very innovative and very engaging in the way that it plays. But that means that it's quite cerebral. It's quite the balance and the use of it is quite esoteric. So it's not accessible. Well, something can be very accessible, right, and very engaging, very innovative, right? The rule of cool, but that's not always going to be very balanced. So these are things that we always have to work on. The game needs to have all three in good measure, but every single item that we design can only have two because unfortunately that's how it works. That's something that I've learned with a lot of out of a lot of effort. And
Yeah.
what happens, what we're trying to do here with these reworks is to make things a lot more a lot cleaner where they can be cleaner, a lot more accessible where they can be accessible. So innovation and let's say complexity, there's more room for it. First of all, because everything is explained better and communicated better, but at the same time, there's more complexity at certain regiments instead of having an overarching, let's say, complicated system that the chance could get be at times
Yeah.
overshadowing everything. And where we're going to see that especially is in the Nords.
That's
I
a
mean, that's
great
probably a good.
segue.
I was going to say that's probably not an awesome segue to go on to it. Yeah. So
And
yeah,
that's and
The Nords are getting an update as well. Sorry, Leo.
no, and I was going to say that that's why, for example, rules like Juggernaut and Devastating Charge come in because they are this um, brutal impact cav, and you want to really feel like you're doing, and you want to feel that all of the rules around it are about that. Leading to the Nords, and I'm going to go back a little bit to the question James asked about what prompted the one drill chains. If I'm going to answer the same thing for the Nords, I will tell you that this purity of purpose and this sort of clarity, the lack of actually, is what prompted the Nords complete rework.
Yeah, I mean, does that come with the thing of when you immediately think of a Nords, you think of Vikings, you think of running up, hitting people really hard. But if you try and do that with a list as it like currently is, you're not generally going to do very well. It's much more kind of thinking man's army than what you initially like expect, or what you might be introduced to.
Yes, and you're very right. So the problem, the Nords had quite a few conflicting things going on. They are a faction of conflict, both in lore and in gameplay, it seems. So there were two things. One is throughout their development, Nords very often um, had rules that required them to take damage before they perform.
Yeah.
That has been particularly difficult to make. That has not been making Nords very popular, let's say, but also uh, it made it very difficult for Nords to be playable in the sense that it's very difficult to have for your faction special rules to be based on reaction. Because most of the times, I mean, we're playing this game, we know that if you put enough effort into something, you can really kill anything. Yes, even the mighty Talus dies very easily to a lot of attacks from the side, right? If you really
Yeah.
want to kill something in this game, you can really kill it.
Yeah.
And that is really that is the first thing that we wanted to make sure that we see in the Nords, that we rid them of passive and reactionary rules that do very little towards actually playing towards their biggest strength, which is charging, 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 right? ABC, always be charging. And then second of all, give them also that clarity of purpose in terms of all the different, let's say, do you want to play all these different play styles? Like, do you want to play your Nord Viking power fantasy? You can. The Mortals are pretty awesome, and we can go through it. Then let's say Half-Bloods, get their own little way of approaching gameplay. The Exalted, the Titans, now all of them have their own unique gameplay that is based on the principles of always be charging for the Nords.
I will say so. I've always loved the Nords. I've always been very much a fan of like the Half Bloods, the Exalted. I've never been a big fan of the Mortals in Nords because Vikings are boring, I guess. However, the update, or I guess the change here, the rework to Nords, I really love what's happened with the Mortals. I'm really you can tell everyone I'm on the fence about picking up like 4 boxes of Raiders at this point because I honestly it's so much fun to play this new Nords update, the Nords rework. So I think he's done a really good job.
Thank you. So yeah, so to start a little bit, there are two things that we wanted to do. One is that the faction has a way of slingshotting things forward. We felt that the previous version of the Blood of the Einherjar, the whole thing, being with a duel, wasn't really adding to what the faction required. So he changed to further double down on the charging principle. Essentially, when you charge into an objective zone, you count as one additional stand. And that is incredibly important because that means the lights can score in this way if they're charging into objective zones. What essentially means is that you're rolling up with your lights with your raiders, and the question is, if you, my enemy, sit on that objective zone, I will charge you, which is the thing I'm very, very good at doing, and I will be scoring doing that. So stay off those objectives, and if you stay off, yes, I might not be able to charge you, but I am projecting power over objective zones that I have not yet reached, which is very interesting, at least which is very important. And that is further accentuated by what we call tribal tactics. Now, Nord players would have been used to the aspects. The aspects were not something that we felt really added to the faction. Yes, it added the bestial side to the characters, but it really did very little towards the army itself. If you needed more attacks, you could always just pick an item that gives you more attacks, right? So the tribal tactic is something that the humans have access to, right? The Jarl is actually the best one using tribal tactics, but the Konyon Gear as well. And they are currently 3 tactics: direct assault, draw them in, and take the flanks. So that is, let's say, inspired from how a Viking raiding group would see and read a situation, like an attack somewhere, and how they would strategize going into the game. What's important is that you pick your tribal tactic before the game begins, not in your list building.
Yeah, that's really that. I was just kind of because I was reading Direct Assault then, just reminding myself, and I thought that sounds quite situational. Like how many scenarios, we go into a tournament or something, how many scenarios are there going to be where you have an objective marker, but if you're choosing that at the in between the list building and the game, you can well adjust and adapt to it.
Yeah, and the great thing is that when you're talking about, so the tribal tactics really work on the regiment the character stand is currently attached to, unless you have the Jarl that says raid tactics, that it says that all friendly mortals regiment, seeing again the battlefield rules are really kicking in here,
Yeah.
in the army gain the benefit of the warlord's tribal tactics. So now
Yeah.
when you're playing full mortals, not only do you have access to that, but you actually have the ability to share it with everybody. What's what can be what's call it even better I think it's in the masteries. Let me tell you, is that when you have the lessons of the Jotun War from the teachings of Mannheim, again, if you go to the Masters, you're going to see we're out with the combat, tactical, and arcane. If you take lessons of the Jotun War, once per battle at the beginning of the character stand's activation, you may change your tribal tactic. All
Yeah,
of
that's
these
huge.
masteries, all of these masteries, all of these concepts, and all of these supremacies are there for you to really double down on the concept that you really want to focus on and make it work for you. So that's really the the heart of every update that we're doing. We want to make sure that we give you access to a certain concept that you like, and we really want to make it cool, exciting, and very focused in the way that you can play it. And that's why, for example, you have Teachings of Mannheim for the mortals and the exalted, Northern sagas for the characters in general, and how those, for the salmon and the vulva, and then you have the Tales of Savagery for the half-bloods, just and the blooded and the Vardyr Lord, trying to
Yeah,
really evoke the feelings of these sub-factions into the masteries.
yeah. No,
Now,
that
the Canyon gear also has access to that, and but instead the exalted regiments like the Bow Chosen are brand new. Steel Chosen have the War Brethren rule, which means essentially that they share the tribal tactic of the Canyon gear, usually the Canyon gear, even if the character stand is not currently attached to the regiment. So they take the tribal tactic of the character stand whose warband they're part of.
yeah. No, that sounds that sounds awesome. Um, in terms of the so there's three different types of battlefield roles. No, four. So
So
you got the immortals for half bred.
the
The
exalted,
exalted, that was, I want
the
to say ascended. I was not ascended. Exalted and the titans or the Otna.
correct, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just a good amount. Again, I really like these changes again, just from like how themey you can now make the list, how much you can focus on one different thing or the other, and really now being able to play it into different strengths, like like things like the Isles raid tactics, where it's really benefiting taking that kind of like mortal army. Because I'm a bit opposite to Aaron. I've always enjoyed the mortal side of the
Mhm.
of the Norse, and the idea of just
Yeah.
taking like a bunch of Viking raiders and like reliving the dark age, like the early medieval period, kind of in like hit a bunch of Vikings on the table, coming to this like
Yeah.
steal your stuff. Yeah, you can really like focus in on that now.
But and then for example, you have your Huffblood, which is uh, essentially it's called the Hunt as you used to know it. The
Mhm.
Salmon and Volva are now inheriting. They're adopting this. They're different philosophies in the lore, but where they come together is that they act as the advisors of the tribes, right?
Yeah,
And so essentially their they share supremacy ability, which is a little bit of a mix of both, but at the same time, tries to bring both regiments elements in there, and they try to act, as the spiritual advisors of the faction in general.
yeah, yeah. No, that's all. No, that's awesome. What's your favorite? I wanted to ask this with the Wardrune as well, but as we're on the Nords, like what's your favorite change with it? If you have one.
So I would say that for the Wadroon, it's really the personalized chance or the triggered effects on the chance.
Hmm.
And for the Nords is tribal tactics and how the Jarl can dabble down on them in a way that really makes sense for the human side of the faction.
Nice. Yeah.
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 And
No,
I'll tell you, and then one more thing that I really liked. I liked the conceptually, so the Conungir's ability, the ruler of Mannheim, essentially changes part of the prophecy unfulfilled faction special rule. That it says essentially that you get +2 to your charging distance as a non-monster regiment, and he changes that and makes it other friendly regiments. So I like the concept of a supremacy being changing something in the core in the army special rules of the faction. And similarly, in the Woodrune, I like the concept where the matriarch queen takes one of her own innate abilities, that took the last breath of the draw event, and
Yeah.
essentially brings that forward as a that ability just powers it up to a supremacy level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a this is for me, that was important personally, because it gave me a new, like, that thought led me perhaps to a new way of approaching supremacies, just further highlighting the
Mm.
innate powers of the character.
No, I really like that. I almost see it like you got a queen and she may be walking about, but then you've got another one who is in charge of a whole thing, and she's
Mhm.
obviously going to have like a bit more like a promote like a promoted position, and she's going to be a bit more impactful than like the Colin gear. So you've got like they're saying, yep, we're gonna do this, and then all of a sudden the High King turns up, and he's like, no, 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 this is what you're going to do instead.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, yeah, let's listen to the real boss now. Yeah,
Honestly, I really like the new Conan Gear Supremacy. I think it's really good, and it really fits in with what you want to play with the Conan Gear. I
yeah,
think one thing that's worth noting, uh, the Conan Gear now has Cleave 1, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
great. But I think, guys, on what Leo was saying about like the kind of the Nords, always be charging. I think a really big update, which I don't think has been seen yet, is on the officers. And my personal favourite change in all of Nords is the Savage. Basically, the Savage being an officer, allowing a unit it's attached to perform a free additional charge action during its
yeah,
activation.
Yeah, so I need to declare to for those that haven't seen the happy hour, Bloodlust is no longer part of the game.
Boo.
And that
go on.
means that charging from reinforcements isn't part of the game, right? Which is really where the biggest problem would lie, essentially, with Savage. But thankfully, that is not the case. But if you go through, there's another, let's say, sub concept that is there. The Sealed Biter allows a command stand to die fighting, or it allows a character stand to die fighting, regardless of whether the regiment has acted this round. So this is a nice little throwback, not, I want to say, to Bloodlust, but to the concept of Bloodlust, to the concept of a Berserker, not really to the rules as they were. And then we can see further doubling down on the concept of on the charging and on the damage you can essentially, that slingshot effect you can have when always be charging with the Nords, and you can see it through the tribal treasures, the trophines actually, which are split into tribal treasures, armors, and weapons.
Mhm.
Yeah, well,
Got one. Okay.
So you're gonna find, first of all, the ones that are not broken, they don't need fixing. Let's say we all like Vinda the Dancer, Rhoda the Red Bringer. These are quite staple
yeah,
items for the Nords. One of my favorite ones here is what you call it, figurehead of the Naglfar.
Mhm.
I, I cannot even pronounce it. Essentially, it gives you Tenacious 3, and you heard it right, because Tenacious now it's an X ability, but against volley actions, right? To help you get stuck in a little bit. So this faction really understands the role, what it is, they want to do. They want to get stuck in, and it gives you the abilities and the tools to do that. And before, Nords, you know, vaguely wanted to get there, They really wanted to get stuck in, they really wanted to do damage, but their kit was not complete. And so it was very reasonable that a lot of people felt a little disenfranchised because there were all the, let's say, all the signs were there that this was a charging brawler army, but really the kit was lacking to make it so. And so the realization that Nords were actually more of a, uh, you know, bow chosen in the forest sort of army wasn't really sitting well. Not because it was a bad concept to begin with, but it was one that you really had to dig to discover. But now
Yeah.
things are a little bit more clearer. If you wanna do your ABC, you can do that. If you wanna play with your bow chosen on the forest in that gameplay that you like, you can still do that. You can now use the terrain better than ever before. The Huffbloods, for example, can now give you even impact for Huffbloods through terrain. So all of these unique characteristics of the Nords are accentuated, but now you're also given the tools to really make it sound.
Yeah, so you can just make it again, like almost personalize it to kind of what you want to. Because I've always seen, and like you said, I've always seen like the Nords. There's always been like almost like guerrilla warfare kind of thing. Like it's like hiding, like being in the, like you said, the bow chosen in the woods kind of thing. Like trying to use the terrain to your advantage as much as possible. But now it's almost like you can just you've got the tools to be able to say, well, to just use it how you want. You're not confined to, if I want it to be effective, I've got to use it this way. Now you can just use it however you want. Yeah.
Definitely. And of course, all of these changes are coming with, these are just the two factors, not to mention like 20 or so pages that are coming as updates to all factions. But I will say I can discuss some of the most prominent ones, I think. Like we said, bloodlust is removed as a special rule, which was very important, right? And we actually went through quite a few iterations of bloodlust until we discovered that this might as well just be a better rule, a better Nord's ability. And in a weird way, it became blood of the Einherjar's current, not because it has anything to do with the rule itself, but it has to do with that berserk nature of wanting to charge and take territory and keep pushing and keep pushing before the next wave of raiders just slam into your ranks as well. And then we have a lot of clarifications like about broken regiments. If you rally, your the your counting of stands resets. Let's say we have things like tenacious and indomitable become X abilities. We have reform being split into two very clean now steps, where before it was sort of an in between and we had a little bit of trouble figuring out where that new center was. Rules like trample and aura of death and lethal demise, they no longer do moral hits just to keep them streamlined. Aura of death is no longer on a per stand ability, it's on a per regiment. Free and additional actions have gotten a further clarification. Now regiments cannot perform more than 3 actions in total during their activation. And it's important to note that actions performed outside of a regiment's activation do not count towards that limit. So if you have a rule, let's say, that tells you, let's say the Dwegs, right? When they get broken, they have this free what you call it,
Rally.
Valley.
rally, right?
Yeah.
So, right, that does not count towards your pool of 3.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have scaling and resolve coming to meet each other. Scaling will essentially use the same numbers as how resolve climbs. The more stands you have, their march is gone from character stance, so they now inherit the march of their regiment. It made no sense for the character to be the one slowing down, right?
Yeah.
The regiment. We have like there's so many. We have like quality of life stuff for march restrictions now to say that essentially you check whether you're in legal position at the end of a march or a chain of continuous march actions. We have clarifications for the charge move. Again, when you get in a legal, there was a little bit of a question about legal position. There is a question now. There was a question about that backwards pivot while closing the door. Now it's allowed. Now, when you're having to decide which facing you're charging, you're looking at your front rank only. Because essentially, when you're looking at the entire regiment, if you were deep, right, that might cause you to essentially be in the front arc, but your entire front, which would be charging, really realistically looked like it was in the side arc. So
Yeah.
now you really only take into account the front rank, which frees up a little bit of space for larger regiment. Like it doesn't penalize them for being larger. Of course, we have a change for single stand regiments. They can no longer just clip an arc and charge it. The majority of their stand needs to be through. That's true for monster, chariots, anything that is a single stand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Charging through clarifications like volley, just bring it, making. Before there were like 3 different lines you had to draw, now there are 2, and the check for obstruction line essentially is as long as the barrage range. So these 2 come together and it solves certain things, certain issues. We had some very corner cases.
Yeah.
And I'm not right now, like I'm going through the document and telling you like these updates, and I'm at page 6 of 24.
Oh yeah, there were loads. There were,
Mhm.
and it's been constant for like the last couple of months, hasn't it? There's always been these like large numbers of changes that have been asked to be tested.
Another one, for example, that at the time of filming this, you wouldn't have known it. Essentially, you know how you activate a character and then you activate the next card after it. So this has been codified as an entourage activation. So now we don't just vaguely talk about it, but it has a name. No change in how it works. It's just now it has a name to it, so we can reference it a lot simpler.
Nice.
So all of the,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've been
No.
saying that since I think when we first originally tested that idea, we called it Entourage, and
Yeah.
I've always just carried on.
Yeah.
So-
To the point, yeah, I'll be playing at LGT, and someone's like, "Oh yeah," and then I was like, "Yeah, Entourage." Like, yeah, I'm going to entourage into this guy, and so
Yeah.
I think in the UK at least, it's been like a standard
Yeah.
term we've used.
It's funny because I was using it as well, and some people were looking at me like, "What is entourage?" What? But then, yeah, just it was important to codify it, and just so many more. Yeah, just so
Yeah.
that's the lion's share of system changes. Essentially, most of these changes, if you think about it, some of them change. They're all quality of life updates, right? So they're there to make our life easier, right?
Yeah.
And then of course we're talking about more specific faction changes. For all factions. First and foremost, all of the aura death values, they have to be adjusted because you had aura of death before, so that was per stand. So now there's an adjusting to make it be per regiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I take it that so this will come out as a just again for like people, any new people who are listening and stuff and thinking, oh, this is going to be this big change. The rule book gets updated, like the downloadable rule book you can get. Battle gets updated, anything as well as like a separate like FAQ thing coming out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
as always, everything on when you download the rule book and the army list, all the new stuff are highlighted. So you don't have to go looking. If you scroll something and you don't see it highlighted, it's not new. When you see it highlighted in red, it's the red text. you know that this is new rules. You don't have to keep going. And of course, every time we do an update, we have a designer's post that we have every single change and where to find it, and every single item that we've changed in the game. So you will be able to find everything there. Really, with the only exception, the only thing that that document is not going to have is what Drew and Nords, mostly because it's just a new armor list. Like, it's just a
Yeah,
new,
yeah,
what changed? Everything.
Yeah,
everything.
Like,
changed
Yeah,
it all.
no, absolutely.
so,
No,
yeah.
and having, I know people have said it before, but yeah, having like the red, having what's changed being highlighted red is such a good idea. It just makes it
So,
so
yeah,
much more
like, the document we
yeah.
have in front of us right now, it's not red by simple virtue of I would have to make the whole thing red. That's
Oh
right.
yeah, yeah, no. Like you said, it's basically like a whole new document.
Yeah.
Might as well just start to scratch from it. Yeah. No, so yeah, no, so the change. I mean, the changes that are coming out are really good. I'm glad you talked about reform a little bit because that was going to be a question I was going to give
Yeah.
to you. Like, apparently, reform is changing quite a bit. Um,
Mm.
Again, is there like one of the is there like a major change that really stood out to you and thought, yes, I've like properly nailed this one, or like
Uh,
really like your favorite change, like the overall rules?
my favorite chains. So, there a number for different reasons. I like the cap at 3 actions per activation, mostly because, I like there was a time where the game only was realistically only 2 actions.
Yeah,
Everybody just had 2 actions, right? But that was, it's very easy to say that the game has power creeped since, but we also need to understand that the game back then only had like 3 factions.
yeah,
So sometimes, new design space is important to help things fit in. So having the ability to do an additional action or free additional, as in, as the distinction is in the rulebook, really helped give a little bit of extra utility out of certain regiments. Now, I didn't like the fact that some regiments could now start creeping into a fourth one, and there could be cases where you could have up to 6. Like, we saw that during testing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I really like the maximum of 3, not as an artificial ceiling, but because having that there essentially tells me that I can give you a number of options without having to fear that you're going to try to do them all at the same time.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
now I
yeah,
can make the game wider. I don't have to afraid about creeping it, like making it too powerful or making it
yeah.
too tall in terms of rules.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I mean, yeah. Personally, all the changes are much more like some of them are just more convenient. Some of them are designed just to help the pace of the game as well and understanding. And there's definitely some which are in there which will have far fewer instances of like feel bad moments, and that whole like being limited to 3 actions is definitely one of them. Definitely one of them.
Yeah, and as a player, like sometimes you're not going to be afraid, that your opponent is just going to break out like a 5 action combo that you could not possibly see coming.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, we're playing Conquest, not Yu-Gi-Oh, kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
I really like the reform changes as well. I'm
yeah,
fairly confident that's how maybe six. When I say the player base, I don't even mean like people who are consuming content. I mean like of all the people that play Conquest, I think probably 60% of people were doing it that way anyway. And so I think
yeah.
it's a really good. I can't think what the word I'm thinking of. Um, to me, it's a really logical way to play it. I didn't mean logical. I can't think of the word. I mean,
Yeah, it makes sense. Like it follows the thought process that one would follow when reforming. But it was important. But it was important because in the previous iteration, essentially, you had a changing of formation with a changing of where you were looking at, and the changing of the center of your regimen, which for most people would be whatever. They would do it the way I wrote it now. But if you were in a really high stakes situation in a tournament, it was really whether you're gonna come in, like, let's say, top three or not. Like, some people would start getting you could, I mean, all of us could start getting a little finicky with it. So by breaking it down like this and clarifying, and of course this is going to come with a new diagram, and the charging also gonna have a new diagram to help guide people as well.
Nice. No, I'm really looking forward to them. Massively looking forward to the Wild June changes when they get rolled out properly. As well as the overall changes that are coming. Yeah. No, I think they're really good. We know that you're a little. I know you said that you basically got like an hour and a half of us, so we don't want to keep you. We don't want to keep you too much longer or anything, Leo. I know it's probably getting late there as well. I think that one other question I had for you
Mhm.
quickly was just this is purely out of curiosity. Um, does it all is it all written in English first?
Yes,
Kind of the kit in.
I do not translate from Greek, because
How do you find that?
what how so. I am fortunate enough to be speaking English from a very young age, very, very young age. I'm also fortunate enough to have been educated in American college. So my studies have been in English, and I've done European law and international business. So in terms of writing, I had the opportunity to develop it quite a bit because I had to work with things that were quite engage quite, let's say, it could get heavy in terms of language.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I noticed is that, honestly, when you write a game, ultimately you end up creating your own syntax,
Mm. Yeah.
realistically. So your grasp of the language could be one thing, but ultimately you need to create this new language that you need to have good grasp of. Right. So, and the other, but ultimately, and actually, this is a much bigger conversation than you might think. Um, I do believe that as a designer, you have a responsibility to write in the language of those that will play it, even if that means that you make mistakes. The reason for that, it's not a consumer thing or a marketing thing. It's a um, matter of attitude, in that I feel that if I would have written in Greek, I could never put myself in the shoes of the players playing the game. You cannot be so introspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like I cannot, because I would be writing something not in the language that it would ever be played. And I would really like to see European game designers do the same, despite of their proficiency in English, because ultimately it's a matter of, it's a little bit acknowledging your audience that whether you like it or not, we we live in this industry works in English, and it's about how you're cognizant of that and how extroverted you are in general, to understand that you're writing a game that other people will play. And so you cannot write something for yourself, because that then translates to a lot of things. That then, very often as a game designer, you have to remove rules that you love. If you're not removing rules that you love a lot of the time, then you're really writing for yourself. You're not writing for players. It's a
Yeah.
matter, it's a simple, it's not, it's a very complicated question. Like, it's multifaceted, actually, not complicated, what you're asking, and it has to do with with how a designer really looks the world in general and how they look at the people playing their games. So it actually, this is a great question. It has a lot of depth to it.
Yeah, it's always been one that's interested me, and I guess like you said, I think probably one element of it is being aware of your bias. Like you can never be unbiased. There's always going to be some natural bias, but it's being aware of it. And I think, like you said, like there's a rule you really like, and you don't want to get rid of it, but you know that that's your bias coming in. If it means that removing it or whatever would be better for the game and everyone else,
Yeah.
it's being aware of that
And
I guess that
yeah.
personal connection.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I will tell you two things. For me, these are two things that I've learned that are incredibly important. So like I learned quite a few things. One about, the three items that I told you before,
Yeah,
and one story that has really stick to me is there were these players that they were giving feedback on something really annoyed about the game, and they were saying about that when you draw a line in the game, you need to specify how thick the line is, the one
yeah,
millimeter line. And essentially, their argument is because a line can be infinitely small, and if you take things to the quantum realm, and the word quantum was actually used, right?
right,
Nothing is really touching each other. I'm like, what
yeah,
are we talking about right now? Like, there are so many things wrong
yeah,
with what we're discussing right now. I mean, at that level, you wouldn't even be knowing where the line started or ended. This is a mood conversation in every possible way. But it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. These folks would believe that, and they would have a following in that. And so you have to change the rule to now say it's 1 millimeter wide, even if it makes absolutely no logical sense. Ultimately, it's perception.
yeah.
If we think
No,
that
that's
something,
a really good example. That's a really good
yeah.
example.
So I need a 1 millimeter wide laser, is what you're saying.
But and that's something that you have to take into consideration. Sometimes you may have a rule that you think is absolutely great or perfect or esoteric or really competitive or whatever, and people will not get it because, and they're not wrong for not getting it. It's probably most likely that you're wrong for thinking that this thing is good. But ultimately, it's perception, and we have to understand that. That's the one thing. And
Yeah,
the other thing is that you have that the people that you write for are probably people that you would never play with, not because of distance, but probably because people are different. We
yeah,
we wouldn't be all close friends with everybody, and therefore we have different taste, we like different things, and we approach games completely different. And writing for an audience that might be approaching games differently than you is a very humbling experience, and I think it's what makes or breaks a lot of designers.
mm,
It's the game belongs to the community that plays it. You're there to give ideas and give it form, but ultimately you write for them, you're not writing for yourself. And unless you really understand and really internalize that, uh, that you wouldn't the game will not exist.
yeah.
Uh,
No, there's a lot of truth in that.
yeah. Oh,
Completely, I completely.
there's so many questions I want to ask you about stuff.
Go for it.
Yeah,
Go for it.
Well,
No, no.
we could be here till 1 in the morning. But
I got a little bit of time if you want to ask. I
okay.
got a little.
okay, awesome.
I mean, I'd love to at some point, if you're free at another time, have a full conversation about game design,
Mhm.
and kind of where you've come from that, because I find all that really interesting. But I
Yeah.
guess what I will ask is, speaking about biases, what are you most excited to play at the moment? Um, what are you
So,
playing with? 'Cause I've seen you painting. It's, by the way, if people haven't seen Leo's painting on the Discord, it's really really good. I've been really
thank you.
impressed when I've seen it. Yeah. So what are you enjoying playing at the moment, and why? I guess.
So right now I'm building, like I've been posting on Discord, my Sorcerer Kings. You know, I try to have a small painted force of everything. So I want to make sure you know that I have everything, and I want to have everything to be in touch with with the models from every faction, essentially, because I mean they are the pieces that are part of the game, right? So like I like playing with all of the armies, and I spend time playing with all of the armies. And it's a weird way um, to say what's a favorite, because everything by virtue of being part of the design team, everything in a way carries a piece of the design team in it, every faction. And so, you know, when I was playing, simply playing games, I would, you know, my favorite faction, my favorite deck, or my favorite thing would be something that really resonates with me. But being part of the design team, you're kind of like you've put a little bit part of yourself in everything. And so in that regard, it's extremely difficult to just say I have this is my favorite faction or this is my favorite thing. I can tell you that Conquest is my favorite game, and I can say that wholeheartedly, but it's not, you know, it's not an answer that I'm not trying to do gymnastics here and avoid the question. But it's more that I just have a connection to the game that it's different um, from just playing a game, and therefore that means that your relationship with it inadvertently would be different as well.
I guess maybe a different. So I guess maybe a different question. And right, this might be a difficult question to answer,
Mhm.
but I promise I'm not fishing for any spoilers. I guess my question would be: is there like a theme or a faction that isn't in Conquest currently in Leo's fantastic lore world that we all love, that you would be really interested to work on, like any kind of theme or I
So
guess
I'll
setting? Yeah.
tell you, actually, there were a lot of concepts. I mean, all of the factions that we put out so far are concepts that I never knew I wanted until Stavros created them.
Mhm.
To be fair, personally, um, concept that I would like to see. Honestly, I've been bugging Stavros for a while for like just a Minotaur faction, but like a peaceful farmer, like ideally little, you know, a little bit like the Gale village surrounded by Romans of Asterix and stuff like that. You know, I find it like super like minding their own business, don't want to deal with whatever is going on in the city states, and just being their own little, you know, Minotaur farmer fighting force, trying to car- try to get everybody to leave their little peaceful village alone. I don't know why I find it so funny, but I like the concept. Yeah.
I mean, I'd love a bread faction. Just in general, I think they're probably my favorite. They're the most. They're my favorite part of the city states in general. The Minotaurs, the Satyr. Um, from the most recent narrative release, the Gorgon,
Mhm.
Yeah,
as well. But no, I think that would be really really interesting
that'd
um,
be really good.
as a faction.
That so one of my this scenario pack has, I think, one of my favorite cases of storytelling through rules, and you're gonna see it through Yindak, and one of, you know, he is attempting to bring a Raksasa. I'm not gonna say anymore, but you know,
Oh,
there is some of Conquest signature dose of reality that will kick in.
I'm
nice.
really looking forward to
Yeah,
that.
I guess that's. I mean, that kind of brings another question as well. Like, was it? I don't want to say was it like refreshing, but was it um like a fresh take doing? Because obviously the change that we're doing is all about kind of balance and
Mhm.
can be seen more from like a kind of competitive like tournament stance kind of thing. Like, was it quite? I guess yeah. What was it quite refreshing doing like more like narrative style rules and
Yes, in a way. Also, it was a little bit stressful in the sense that it's a new format for us. So we're trying that with each passing narrative project to find a little bit a better footing. But I think we're getting like, I think that if you like the first one, you're really gonna like the second one.
Awesome.
I like you own every faction, so I'm really excited for this narrative. In fact, I don't. Right, please, everyone, forgive me on the camera for my really messy office. I don't know if it will reach. Actually, here we go. 1 sec. There you go. Ooh,
So there's
there's
a key part that Leo said to that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was-
Leo's is painted. Yeah, mine's not. I've got there. We go. And my Hunter Kings is over there. But yeah, James forgot I had a Tontor, and I was like, yeah, it's on my card next to my Fallen Divinity, of course. It's just there.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, would you class yourself, Leo, as like a competitive, or like I'm not a fan of the terms anyway, but kind of like, if you had to like, I don't know, put a label on or whatever, would you like fall more on like the competitive or the casual side of the game?
I like both. I try, and I think this is a part of Parabellum's culture, is that we want to promote organized play. We want to promote competition, but we want to promote competition in a healthy way, because as players, we've seen competition getting out of hand in miniature war game sometimes. And for example, the way we ran Heos like really reflects how I feel about competitiveness overall.
Right.
In Heos, let's say we spend 2 days just eating and drinking with one another before we ever rolled a dice for the final.
Nice.
And that was incredibly important, first of all, for us, but also for what the game means to us.
Yeah. So
I
it's kind
don't
of like
know if you. I don't know if you've heard this. I don't know if I've shared on any other game, but at LGT, the game system, there was apparently an actual fist fight at a table, and people had to be removed from the venue by security.
really.
And I was like, apparently, and I was like, I've never been so mad in a tabletop war game that I've wanted to punch somebody.
I mean,
To be fair to any system, I don't think this had to do with the game system.
Oh no, of
To
course
be-
not. No, I
Yeah.
don't. No,
To be
but-
fair to other teams and designers, I don't think anybody's design really. I think there were deeper issues there. But it's
the thing I found really impressive, if you remember LGT, is that obviously they're really kind of tables, aren't they? Like, so you might have like 10
Mhm.
tables playing next to each other. So someone has gone through the effort of going all the way around the tables.
That's all right. He's gone on a
Have a
2-minute
beer.
walk.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
but I think that's too much.
Yeah.
Feel free to take me up on that conversation for game design. I love talking about game design. I also love sharing the lessons learned from game design. I wish more designers spoke about these things. It's something that I would really like to see more. It's because we sometimes have there's a lot about this industry that could be communicated, and we could learn a lot of things, but oftentimes we don't really put a lot of that knowledge out there. Knowledge in the sense that things that I've learned from experience, not that I'm any sort of you know anything more than that, but some it's definitely passion, and definitely something. What I can tell you is that ultimately for me, um you know ultimately war games are a storytelling device, in some way a more important storytelling device than even RPGs, because when you approach a war game as a storytelling device, it is no longer a game that is, let's make a balanced game first and then dress it with the story. No, it now becomes a sandbox, custom made, to tell a specific story. Balance is something that can be achieved, or to be honest with you, there's always going to be lacking somewhere. You play with dice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately what we're trying to do is to keep Conquest a game that tells stories, ultimately, more than anything else. And that is, I think, just my favorite think about it and my favorite way to approach the game.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You just saying that kind of like just pose the question: would you ever bring
Mhm.
out like historical battles, like historic battles from Conquest, where you have a set side, you have like set forces either side, not objective based or anything
So
else, but
that's a good question, but I will tell you that all of Conquest is historical battles, and
yeah,
I'll explain.
good answer. Yeah,
I'll explain. I played a lot of historicals, and I love historicals because historicals, first and foremost, are a storytelling game, are a
yeah.
storytelling device, right? They're telling the story of a very specific battle at a very specific place and time. Sometimes I felt that when I played historicals, there was a lot of emphasis on the historical details of the whole thing rather than of how would a general feel? How would it feel to command an army of that size in these sort of circumstances? That feel is ultimately, I think, what a good historical game conveys because the feeling really educates you. When you're having a battle, engaging battle that is against all odds, that feeling of hopelessness at a very small level translates to you as a player because you're like, I'm about to lose. And that kind of immediately informs you that the person that was having that battle faced the same difficulties and somehow, let's say, managed to prevail or not. But
Yeah.
that feeling is a very good teacher about, what really happened in that story. Similarly, we're trying to capture that same feeling through Conquest. Things like you're like, um, those Thunder Riders, they're marching and charging you, and you're not gonna like it. You see that, and it needs to evoke the feeling that if that thing goes off, it will go off, right? And
Yeah,
so, in that regard, that approach exists already in the game.
yeah. No,
For me,
that's a really good point. That's yeah.
for, for me, it's a more of it's an approach rather than a format.
Yeah.
All I thought when you were asking that question, James. So, James might know. Leo, have you ever seen a TV program called Time Commanders?
Oh, I love Time Commanders.
Wait, was that the thing that they were playing Rome to the War and they were?
Yes.
Yeah,
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 okay.
yeah.
So I just think that you should do that in Conquest. That would be fantastic. That's the type of historical battle. You could have you on one side and Stavros on the other, and you can send your minions down to play. You could have right,
Yeah,
okay. You
yeah.
have
This
four
is
different tables set up. Leo's on one side, Stavros on the other. Yanis is having to run between them. I think it'd be fantastic.
oh, that'd
If
be
we ever
rad.
set up,
Yeah,
if we ever set up streaming, James, I actually would be well up for doing that. That'd be
oh,
fantastic.
that'd be hilarious. Yeah, I'd be up for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be very fun.
We have to dress up. We have to dress up.
No, no. That's a good answer. I hadn't actually like thought of it from that extent. Yeah. No. Now there was another question, but I can't remember. I was just about to ask it, and I've got Time Commanders in my head now.
Yeah.
It was such a good TV show.
It
Like it's
was. It
such
was.
an.
Oh, it was. I used to watch it all every time it was on.
Yeah, me too.
Oh God, what was my question? Aaron, say something while I'm trying to think what my question was.
You know what I'm not happy about? So this is the other side of James thinks. So I thought I had purchased some household guard that were built,
Mhm. Yeah.
and they are not built. They're in a box, and so I now need to build 6 stands of household guard, um, which I wasn't expecting to build.
I think the household guard build would be the only kit in wargaming history where the opened and assembled box would be more expensive than the closed and shrink wrap box. I
I mean,
think
honestly, yeah. Right,
I
I
think
love the models.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Why is
I know, like, that's why I'm taking I'm saying it, and you don't,
uh,
yeah. But yeah,
why are
I
the
think
arms three pieces?
I think it's the only box in wargaming history that I would pay more for opened and assembled than closed in the box.
Yeah, I try to. Because like it's not even that they're hard to build. It's just there's so many pieces, and the models are
Yeah.
lovely. I really like the models.
They were created at a time where there were quite a few design limitations,
Mhm.
and the only way to really go over those design limitations is to cut things in more pieces. So that's unfortunately why we see them being at about 12, 13 pieces a model.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be happy
Uh,
when they're finished.
but I'm telling you, there are some resculpts coming that you're gonna love a lot.
No, that'd be really good.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, we're not. I've been refraining from asking you anything about like future releases or factions or anything else because I know you're just gonna like probably say no anyway. I remember what my question was. Is there like any? Because I would love to like see like some like something like a siege in the game. Is there any like kind of like big or new like I don't know like design concept or something in that aspect. So I've been toying around with the idea of
Mhm.
sieges, how it could be like a almost like a hybrid between like First Blood and Last
Yeah.
Argument, and if there's
So
like any kind of like going on those lines in the future.
here's something that actually you're making a good point in the sense that I think that sometimes a lot of folks are asking or have asked me in the past about something like that. Let's say and they would mention for TLAoK, but in reality, we commonly say that there are two games, TLAoK and First Blood. In reality, at least from my perspective, there is one game and different zoom levels, if that
Yeah,
makes sense. And
yeah,
when looking at like this, a siege could be possible within the realm of First Blood. Now, it's definitely a narrative scenario that we want to go for. What we're doing right now with First Blood is mostly focusing on the balance and accessibility side of it. There is a lot of great work that is being done. We're very fortunate to have a new member on board, Evan, that has taken the responsibility to take whatever give him direction and right, just make it happen, like sort of thing, and also go hard at the playtesting side of things to make sure that everything comes in together. So we're pouring resources into First Blood to make it a lot tighter as a game when it comes to that. And once that happens, we can look at we can look at seeds and stuff as part of narrative scenarios and all that good stuff.
yeah. Awesome. Yeah. No, I'd be so down for that. Um, and actually, what I just wanted to go back a little bit to what you're saying
Mhm.
about like meeting the design team and everything. And it is like a massive kudos to you and but everyone else as well, and the Stavros and Darrow with the happy hours. Like it is such a good opportunity of meeting like the people, like the faces behind the game, everyone who's working behind the scenes, and just for the community to be able to interact directly with you,
Mhm. Yeah.
with you all, and be able to react and ask questions, and um, it makes it a much more like personal human game in that aspect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a concept that we thought of during COVID like lockdowns. It started as community hangouts. We just painted together with community members. We would just chill, while we were just drinking and painting, essentially. And
yeah,
then we thought, this can be our way of communicating directly to an audience, and talking about new things, but not it being. I think it's a little different than a stream. it's more personal than that. It's not like we just show up and talk. I like that, we can take questions from the audience live. I really love that. And I really
Yeah,
hope that as we grow and more people join in, we can still keep that as much as possible.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one of the chats we've almost started like a drinking game to see like how many times technology hates Daryl, and things like that. It just keeps it like really, yeah, like very like kind of personal. You can tell that we're all part of the same conversation. It's
Yeah.
not like we're just watching TV or like a YouTube video or something. It's everyone's kind of like feels very engaged, everything with it, and it's just a really good concept. So yeah, personally, I hope that doesn't like go away or anything anytime soon. The happy hours.
No, we
Yeah,
love it. We want to keep it.
good, awesome,
Oh, we want to keep it always. Yeah.
Can we
awesome.
bring back drinking and painting? Because I've got a lot of models to paint.
Actually, that would be fun if, yeah, that would be a lot of fun. We can do it if we can do it with your guys' podcast if you want, or
Oh, that'd be
you
sweet.
can-
That'd be grand.
And
yeah,
talk about being shown up at my painting by Leo, and talk about game design would be great.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely want you back on to talk more about the game design and the aspect. It is fascinating, and of course there is the like I don't know when it's coming out or anything, but there is that RPG book.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is it still due to be released? The
So we're going to be discussing more about it in the happy hours and how that's going
oh,
to
okay.
form. So we're going to be revealing more information. Right now, it's a project that is actively being developed.
Yeah,
We're thinking of ways of enriching it further. So we're going to be giving more updates as we're moving on. Yeah.
Absolutely.
nice, yeah.
And I think obviously another great episode idea, as long as as long as Leo's prepared to drink a lot, I would like to have a Leo drunk lore episode, because that would be
That's
better
my
than a normal one.
That's my secret. I can blur out like lore like you would think I'm drunk at any point. I don't even need anything. I can just I can ramble incoherently without even having to drink a sip.
That's it. No,
I thought, I
I'd
thought
love,
you, I thought you were going to say
I,
you're like the Hulk. Like that's my secret. I'm always drunk.
I'm always Oh, the worst part is that Leo lore, like I've honed. Like I've started like tying into theories. I've started making connection. I've started spending like a dangerous amount of time thinking about it. Like
See,
maybe, yeah.
Conquest conspiracy. There we go. Forget game design, Leo. That's
Oh,
boring.
this is
We're
good.
going to do Conquest conspiracy theories.
Yes.
This will be my side hustle. Yeah, if I ever need
That'd
that,
be
that would be
amazing.
yeah.
Ah, dude.
Yeah.
We'll get a board. We'll put it up.
Oh, it'd be like that meme, won't it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Uh,
Yeah. Oh, great. Um. Do you have any other questions, Aaron?
no, I think that's been really good. I really appreciate you coming
I've got
on.
more. Yeah, I've definitely got more game design ones and stuff. But like I said, this could go on for like 2 a.m. if we start getting into it. So I
But
definitely want that more.
I'd love to have another chat and just talk about that
Yeah.
stuff. Like that.
Yeah.
These are things
That'd be really
I love as well. So I'll be very happy to talk about it.
That'd be great.
That'd be
We'll book one in advance this time as well.
yes.
It'd be really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I mean,
Awesome. Cool.
so I was to say, yeah, Leo, we're still really bad at ending podcasts. So feel free, mate. How do you think we should finish up?
I mean, I can give you a couple suggestions if you want to try for your next ones. The
Definitely.
one thing you can sing. It's the like the end, but then really try to harmonize, and then like slowly fade it out. So that could be one thing. I guess interpretive theater could be one.
That'd be a good way.
As
Yeah.
Yeah, as it slowly fades to black, that could be another thing. Or it could be like mid sentence, just
Rolling dice on the battlefield, armies clash, no unknown.